All right. First rule of the channel, we not talk about the channel. Second rule of the channel, this is not legal advice. So this is going to be the 2024 offseason fantasy football preview for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And a lot of theory, a lot of strategy going on in this one. Overall, we got to talk about like Arthur Smith, the new offensive coordinator for the Steelers. Sometimes good football teams in real life don't translate into fantasy. And it's the same thing where like from a real world perspective, we could have like bad football teams that are going to translate a lot of players over to our score sheets. So news and notes to start off with, Mercedes Lewis, 40-year-old tight end, signs a 1-year deal to remain with the Chicago Bears. If they can trust you and you're a good teammate, you're going to play a long time in the league. I bring this up. I did watch him play in high school way back in the day. That's how old I am. Giants tight end Darren Waller retires at 31 overall. So these two kind of going together with each other. I did go ahead and move Daniel Bellinger all the way up to my tight end 12 in my rankings. I want to make sure my notes are where I can see them. Again, the story that we tell from a fantasy football perspective and whether or not I'm willing to be wrong at the price that a guy has to go at. So Daniel Bellinger, good athletic measurables, 4th round draft pick in 2022, 4.63 guy coming out of San Diego State. 3rd-year tight ends tend to break out with good athletic measurables who are on a team where they can be the number 1 or number 2 in their offense. We got all that from Daniel Bellinger. The only thing that we got to have to pay attention to is whether or not this year's 4th round draft pick, who runs a 4.57, good, another guy with good athletic measurables, if he's going to be the one that's going to start the season as the starting tight end. That would move Daniel Bellinger down. That would move Theo Johnson all the way up to tight end 12, because anybody that can finish as the number 1 or number 2 receiver in their offense is going to be fantasy relevant. That's a lot more valuable if they're the tight end. In this case, Daniel Bellinger, because he's that 3rd year and because of the athletic measurables, is going to be more valuable than Theo Johnson if he's the starting tight end, than vice versa. All right. Steelers today, Mike Tomlin, contract extension through 2027. Kind of fortuitous, is another one of those things where it wasn't planned. Arthur Smith, he's going to become the offensive coordinator after the meme lord Matt Canada takes over or gets fired. Then they bring in the other meme lord, Arthur Smith, to be the offensive coordinator. My thoughts on Arthur Smith are, just because you're not stupid doesn't mean you're a good head coach. I think I brought this up before. It looked like he was having some type of temper tantrum with the general manager over having Desmond Ridder as his starting quarterback. That's the long and short of it. They went out and they got Bijan, they got Kyle Pitts, even if he was nicked up last year, and Drake London. And Arthur Smith is like, no, I'm more interested in trying to win football games ugly than I am trying to put fans in the seats. And again, the NFL, it's not about winning and losing. It's about your ability to put fans in the seats. If you have all these like high-end draft capital and you're not trying to maximize them to your fans, and your fans aren't excited about it, that's going to trickle down to you getting fired, even if he was trying to win games by doing whatever he thought was best to win games. And there were points last year where I will say that like maybe he was in a lot of football games that he didn't have, he shouldn't have been in, but that doesn't mean you're a good head coach, because a good head coach or a good coach would make me believe that Desmond Ridder is a top 10 quarterback. You didn't do that. You allowed me to realize that Desmond Ridder may not have a real world football ability. All right, moving on to the Steelers. Last year, they got rid of Kenny Pickett. They shipped him to the Eagles. They were 25th in passing yards. They were 13th in rushing yards. They were 28th in points for. They were 6th in points against. If we get a pretty good increase in scoring for the Steelers, they are probably going to be good enough from a defensive perspective to theoretically lose a Super Bowl. So just think about that. I'm expecting the rushing yards could go up because of Arthur Smith and their 1st and 2nd round draft picks. Troy Fautanu, offensive guard tackle from Washington. Zach Frazier, center guard from West Virginia. I could definitely see that the Steelers are going to be better at running the football. And because of Russ, they're going to be able to be slightly better in throwing the football, which means they're going to score a lot more points, which is good from a fantasy perspective. And they're going to have a good enough defense to allow them to make a good run at the Super Bowl. How much that's going to translate from a fantasy perspective, I don't think it's going to help the running backs. I do think it's going to theoretically maybe help George Pickens. Roman Wilson is going to be the sleeper, and Pat Freiermuth is going to be a little bit interesting to break down on all this stuff. So overall, I would generally think the Steelers are going to have about 500 pass attempts on the table. That's on the low end. And remember, like teams like the 49ers can be like very efficient on low passing. I'm not necessarily expecting the Steelers to get that efficient, But last year, when we look at the Baltimore Ravens, who are 4th in the league in scoring, led all of football with 156 yards rushing per game. So we can get a lot of scoring on a high volume rushing offense. And the Ravens only had about 213 yards passing per game to go along with it. We don't need a lot more out of Russ and the passing game in order for the Steelers to be good. Now, am I saying that Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren are better running backs than, say, like Gus Bus? Yeah, probably. Yeah, that probably. But it also helps that they had Lamar Jackson, and obviously, it would be nice if the Steelers had like a really high end rushing quarterback to help bolster the offense. All right, Russell Wilson, he comes in, he gets cut by the Broncos. In this case, I would probably lean towards they paid him a lot of money to be really good, and he was only okay. And that the limitations that he had in that offense, it was just probably better to move on. From a fantasy perspective, yeah, he was a fringe starter at 17.1 points a game. With Justin Fields, that guy that we were talking about, that high-end rushing quarterback. If you have 2 starting quarterbacks, you don't have one, and that's doubly true when it comes to fantasy football. If Russ is going to get cut into in the red zone by Justin Fields, because Justin Fields has a package, Russ is not going to have any fantasy value. Neither is Justin Fields in this case. If it's just Russ, yeah, you're probably looking at theoretically a top 10 quarterback. Like, he's going to be on the edge of streamability. If it was just Russ, he'd be my quarterback 17. With Justin Fields, I'm expecting Justin Fields to have some type of package. Russell Wilson's down there, combined with Justin Fields as quarterback 31, just above Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell, that I'm expecting to have like a low volume passing to go along with no rushing upside. In this case, Russ would have enough rushing upside to support himself, even in a low volume passing offense, if it wasn't for Justin Fields. So Russ is going at quarterback 29 on Fantasy Pros, 195 overall on Underdog. And remember, Underdog is a best ball league. It's a wide receiver meta. I'm trying to get an idea of how everybody else values these guys, so I can understand, like, if I have them undervalued or overvalued, how I can take advantage of other people's like thinking. Russ is going quarterback 32 with an ADP of 212. On Underdog, they expect Justin Fields to be the better quarterback 30, 206. I'm expecting that they think that there's going to be some Justin Fields spike weeks throughout the year, which would not surprise me, even though I think that Russ is going to be the starter as long as he's healthy. From a talent perspective, all he has to do is be good enough to push the Steelers up probably about a touchdown a game, and Russ is going to keep the job the entire time. On ESPN, Russ is going all the way down here at 269 overall, quarterback 30. And again, I think this is about where you should go, because I'm expecting a significant amount of rushing touchdowns and some of the passing touchdowns to go to Justin Fields in this offense. So what it really matters from a fantasy perspective is how good Russ needs to be to have those other guys return on investment. So when we talk about the running back room, you're looking at Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren, who finishes running back 20 and 25 overall, which is about where I think they should be going. I have them at my running back 30 combined, because outside of getting lucky, I don't know how either one of these guys wins you a league, because you're going to be mostly betting on one of them getting injured. On Fantasy Pros, Najee is going running back 28, 71 overall. Jaylen Warren's going running back 28, 85 overall. On Underdog, you're looking at Najee being running back 20, ADP of 84.3. Jaylen Warren's going running back 25, ADP of 89.9. And then on ESPN, they're going back to back at running back 25 and 26, 75 and 76. And trying to guess the usage is going to be the big issue. Remember, the two things that we want is we want red zone usage and we want design passing work. Probably Najee's going to be the red zone guy, and Jaylen Warren's going to be the design passing work guy. The problem to begin with is that in this offense is going to be a lower volume passing offense. So some of these 61 receptions are probably going to stay consistent with Jaylen Warren. It just depends on like how efficient they're going to be overall. And that's going to cap Najee Harris's ceiling. If Najee Harris is the red zone guy, that's going to cap Jaylen Warren's ceiling. The 4 rushing touchdowns that Jaylen Warren got is not going to be enough to win you a league. And combined, if we could look at like 12 rushing touchdowns, if these two guys were one guy together, it would be an amazing running back. And that's what you're mostly looking at if you're going to pull the trigger on these two guys is maybe getting lucky that there's an injury and one of these guys can be like in that 80 to 90% snaps with all the passing work and all the rushing work going together. The other thing is why I would be down on these guys in all formats is with Justin Fields there. Justin Fields is going to vulture some of the red zone work, which is going to lower the overall value of these guys. So I can't even necessarily talk about ADP shopping on the cheaper guy, which would probably be Jaylen Warren, who may have the higher upside if he's able to take over the backfield. The Steelers didn't pick up Najee's fifth-year option. I've heard people talk about this story. Overall, I generally would tend to think that it's going to be split enough that it's not going to have enough upside, even if Jaylen Warren is the more dynamic guy. And again, it's going to be Justin Fields probably coming in and running the goal line offense. There was rumors last year with Arthur Smith that Justin Fields was either going to get like traded to the Falcons last year, or the other thing that they were talking about was that he would be a prime candidate to get dealt in the offseason to the Steelers, and he showed, or to the Falcons, and he shows up to the Steelers with Arthur Smith, because I think that's what Arthur Smith wants from a starting quarterback. Russ can do 90% of it, and then they just bring in Justin Fields when it matters. That's going to lower your overall upside of Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren, who I think overall their over underlines are going to be very close to the 1,000 yards rushing, 8 touchdowns that Najee had. Maybe I would go like 10 rushing touchdowns with Najee. Not going to have a lot of receiving work. The volume that he had as a rookie, the 94 targets, 74 receptions that were low efficiency as a rookie, that's not going to come back with Jaylen Warren being there. Jaylen Warren wasn't even that efficient. I can maybe see the efficiency of Jaylen Warren's receiving work going up, but it's not going to be significant enough unless he can get enough of the red zone work for it to matter. So like a poor man's Kamara may be somewhere in the cards, but he's going to have to be the red zone guy overall attached to this offense. And to repeat myself, like Justin Fields is going to be the guy that I can definitely see being the red zone running back when it comes to the Steelers. They also brought in Cordell Patterson. If he has any type of role in the offense, that's going to also make Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren less fantasy valuable. I imagine that Cordell Patterson's real role may be as a kick returner, but that's something to be paying attention to going on. Wide receiver room. This is where I'm a little bit more interested. George Pickens, he is my wide receiver 39, with the expectation that outside of winning certain weeks like he did last year, I don't know how he wins me leagues unless I get lucky and he does his damage in the chip and in the semifinals. That's going to be possible. He's going about the right range. On Fantasy Pros, he's going wide receiver 28, 55 overall. On Underdog, he's going wide receiver 28 with an ADP of 42.7. Again, they're looking for spike weeks. And then on ESPN, he's going 56 overall, wide receiver 32. Again, like I think that's in range where he should be going. I have him slightly lower because the lack of consistency means that I can't put him in certain builds. You would theoretically be able to get a higher efficiency type of season from Brandon Ayuk. Similar amounts of targets in this offense last year. Pickens had 106. Brandon Ayuk had 105. So you could have that spike in efficiency with George Pickens to take that significant enough step forward. I am not saying that Brandon Ayuk and George Pickens are the same player. I'm saying statistically that efficiency could go up with Pickens attached to a better quarterback, and that would allow him to have a better season overall. So that 5 touchdowns could increase along with like 200-300 yards passing or receiving. And then you would have the ability from George Pickens to go from wide receiver 26 to like wide receiver 14. That's possible. My thoughts on that would still be he would still be in that boom bust range. He would just buy you more weeks as opposed to be able to be consistent enough to get you into the playoffs in order for it to matter overall. So there would be guys that I would be interested in with George Pickens. And the way that I would explain this from a strategy standpoint is in this range, like a guy like Trey McBride may score more points than George Pickens. As a tight end, I'd be more interested in him. Same thing with Anthony Richardson, having the ability to win me a league. But what I would do in most of these leagues, if I was interested in a Trey McBride or Anthony Richardson, I would jump up and go get these guys around earlier. So it will allow George Pickens to fall to me in that build where I know I have a guy that's going to win me a certain amount of weeks, and that's going to have value. So I would not be going up on a George Pickens. It would be one of those guys that I would punt at value once the guys on my list are gone, because I've gone up and gotten them enough early that I'm not going to go after them. About the only guy on this ESPN league that I would be really interested in going up around earlier and getting would be like Jonathan Brooks down here at 66 overall. So something along those lines. And then on Fantasy Pros, to talk about this, since I'm here, with Pickens going 55 overall, it would be like a scary Terry at 62 overall may have more interest to me because of the theoretical week-to-week value with top 10 upside, something along those lines. So, again, I'm punting. I'm going after my targets. George Pickens falls to me. Yeah, I'll take my 5 to 7 free weeks to go along with George Pickens. That's fine. The other reason why I'm not quite as interested in George Pickens would be, even with that theoretical upside, to be Brandon Ayuk, is the Steelers got rid of Deontay Johnson. They shipped him to the Panthers. They brought in Roman Wilson, a third-round pick, wide receiver from Michigan. I really like Roman Wilson. I really like him in this offense. So if Pickens' role is probably going to be like that isolated X, I could definitely see Roman Wilson being the Z slot. And I could also see the Steelers are going to run a lot of 2 tight end sets. That's what Arthur Smith did with the Falcons last year. The Steelers do have 2 tight ends. The second wide receiver is going to be the big issue. Maybe it's Van Jefferson. I don't like any of the other wide receivers. They're not even worth really talking about in this offense. Van Jefferson did not sign anything significant. 1 year, $1.29 million with 167,000 guaranteed. Like, if he's the number 2 or the number 3, it's very tenuous that he's going to be that guy. It really comes down to, like, if Roman Wilson is going to be the number 2 when they're in those 2 tight end sets, because I imagine the Steelers might be in 2 tight end sets like 60% of the time, and Roman Wilson's going to have to be on the field in those sets. So overall, I do think that there's a little bit more value in Roman Wilson from a week-to-week standpoint. The consistency of opportunity may be the Z in this offense. Instead of Pickens having these like boom bust weeks, they can move Roman Wilson around and design opportunities for the Z more than they can the X. It's not necessarily mean that I don't think that George Pickens can play that role if they ask him to do that, but this would be more in line with what Roman Wilson can do with his athletic ability moving around the offense. And in this case, that over underline of what George Pickens did, like 1,100 yards, 5 touchdowns. Yeah, I could definitely see as a rookie Roman Wilson doing that on about like 100 targets to 120 targets in this offense. So from a price standpoint, if I want the same statistical outcome, I'm going to go with the cheaper guy. And I did move Roman Wilson down to wide receiver 60. That's primarily based off the fact that, like, there's a whole bunch of ifs and buts and maybes that we have to find out during camp for it to matter. That's why I moved him down. He was like my wide receiver, like 45. I moved down to wide receiver 60 with anticipation that we're going to find all this stuff out. And he is going wide receiver 78 on Fantasy Pros, 194 overall. He's going wide receiver 71 on Underdog with an ADP of 155. That would tell me that they are expecting a couple spike weeks from Roman Wilson over there on Underdog. And then on ESPN, he's going all the way down here with Van Jefferson, wide receiver 95, 263. So, this would be one of those guys like 13th round pick, first round or first week priority. If the snap share is right and the usage is right, I might not even want to risk that in this offense, that I could theoretically get something along the lines of this wide receiver 26 finish that George Pickens did last year. They got rid of Deontay Johnson. That's going to be 85 targets. Primarily, those targets do go to running backs first, and then tight end second. But, and here's the big asterisk behind all this, we are expecting some type of improvement in the offense in general because Russ is coming in there. So even though there are, this 87 vacated targets in 13 games, I imagine that we're going to get more of a 1-to-1 replacement to Roman Wilson if he's the wide receiver 2. And then it just becomes an issue of like how much more he's integrated in the offense. So at the prices that I'd be going to find out with Roman Wilson, for him to do roughly George Pickens stat line versus George Pickens becoming this year's Brandon Ayuk, that would be the question. Of 50 overall, something along the lines like 4th or 5th round draft pick to go get Pickens, or, like that late round doesn't cost me anything dart throw for Roman Wilson. I'm obviously going to go after Roman Wilson because of the chance that with what Roman Wilson's going to do, he's going to give me the same chance to win a league at so much less capital than what George Pickens is going to give me the ability to win a league going at the capital that he's going at. All right. Let's go on the tight end room. Pat Freiermuth, he is my tight end 10. There are a few guys that I probably would be looking at that are maybe safer plays attached to better offenses, like maybe Hunter Henry, Dalton Schultz, Cole Kmet, Dallas Goedert. The story again with Pat Freiermuth is going to be like all those tight ends that we can talk about that are going to have the road to be the number 1 and number 2 in their offense are going to have so much fantasy value that they have to be like overvalued. And in this case, like Pat Freiermuth, he's one of those guys that like, I'm just going to watch everybody else go after all these other guys, knowing that like, if I miss on, your Trey McBrides, your Kyle Pittses, your Dalton Kincaid, there's always going to be Pat Freiermuth. He's got the opportunity to finish as the number 1 of this offense. So if we look at George Pickens and his 106 targets, maybe we can give him some type of step forward in the overall target range. Maybe we can bump him to 140 targets. We could also expect that he's going to be in that like 100 to 120 target range. There's still that chance that Pat Freiermuth can do 120 targets in this offense if there's 500 pass attempts in this offense. That's not going to be like a ridiculous stretch to talk about with for Pat Freiermuth. So like getting 800 yards receiving with like 6 or 7 touchdowns is going to be very attainable for Pat Freiermuth in that 100 to 120 target range as the number 1 or number 2 in this offense. I could see him being the number 1 target guy in this offense overall. That's why I would have him up as high as he is, even though I'm speculating on a lower volume, lower efficiency offense overall. I'm not quite as concerned with Darnell Washington breaking out this year. Remember, 3rd-year tight ends with good athletic measurables. So I would imagine he's going to be more of the blocker in this offense. That's why, like, whoever is the wide receiver in the two wide receiver sets is going to matter more, because I could definitely see Pat Freiermuth operating as that de facto slot guy, that number 2 in the offense, and that would move his value up. So this would be a guy like the story that we tell. Number 1 and number 2 in the offense. That's all we basically have to do to say, hey, does a guy have fantasy value? Tight end 10 overall. That's what I'd be looking at overall in this thing. And last year with the Falcons, Jonnu Smith, the tight end 2 for the Falcons, was tight end 17 overall in this offense. So again, if there's a little bit of apples to apples when it comes to what the Steelers are going to look like, Darnell Washington being like the 6th offensive lineman, Pat Freiermuth being moved around and being schemed open, you're going to be telling the story against the story that Russ doesn't go over the middle of the field and Russ doesn't throw to tight ends. So that's part of the reason why I would have Pat Freiermuth as low as I do relative to the other guys. But I'm going to be speculating on a Pat Freiermuth breakout more so than expecting that Dalton Schultz is able to beat out Diggs, Collins, and Tank Dell. Cole Kmet's going to outdo those 3 wide receivers. Like, it's an easier road for Pat Freiermuth to get there than it is the other guys, even if they theoretically may be safer attached to higher volume passing offenses. So anyway, that's about all I got for the Steelers, and hopefully I will be back tomorrow.